Coming up on Tech News Weekly, I kick things off with an interview with our very own Aunt Pruitt, all about Adobe MAX, about Firefly, and everything the company announced at its conference.
I gave you a double dose of Pixel 8 Pro fun, starting with a full review of this new device that got a week ago. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I talk a lot about AI. And then I welcome my friend Mishaal Rahman to talk a little bit about an article he wrote on Android Police, all about Ultra HDR, why it's special, and what you can expect in the Pixel 8 Pro.
Very, very cool. I round things out then with my story of the week. It's all about OpenAI, what the company is rumored to be announcing in November at its developer conference in San Francisco. And then I show you ChatGPT's new voice feature. It's pretty doggone compelling. Awesome. All of that is coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 307, recorded Thursday, October 12th, 2023. Pixel 8 Pro review. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Brooklinen. It's no trick. Brooklinen's best-selling linens are sure to curb those seasonal scaries this fall. Visit in-store or online at brooklinen.com and use code TNW for $20 off your online purchase of $100 or more, plus free shipping.
And by our friends, IT Pro TV, now ACI Learning. IT skills are outdated in about 18 months. Launch or advance your career today with quality, affordable, entertaining training. Individuals use code TWIT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership at go.acilearning.com/twit. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
I'm the other guy, Jason Howell, and to prove that we break the news, I'm going to take this Pixel 8 Pro, I'm going to snap it into two pieces right now. Just kidding. Oh. I'm not going to do that because I have to review it first, and then I will break it.
No, Google's like, get him, send it back.
They're like, that's our review unit. We did not clear this. I wonder what they do. What would they do? Like,
yeah, I don't know what they would do. What would they do?
They probably wouldn't send me another one.
That's what it would be. You just wouldn't get another one. I don't think they would charge you for it, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They would take a phone that you had and break it.
Oh, they'd break in and break my own
your phone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, while we ponder that, I think let us get underway with our first interview today. Some of you may know the person we're bringing to the show today. I am super excited to be talking about Adobe MAX with a person who knows a thing or two about Adobe MAX, having attended conferences in the past and also being a certified creative professional. Joining us here today, it's Aunt Pruitt. What?
Oh.
Hi, Aunt.
Hey, hold on. Yes, Google, send it to Aunt Pruitt, not Jason Howell. Yes.
Oh,
Aunt
you got
Pruitt.
Yours.
Right, Aunt Pruitt. Got it. Appreciate it. Hey, gents, how y'all?
Doing well, yeah. So I think we got to start off by kind of laying the groundwork here because some people might not know about Adobe MAX. So before we dig into what was announced, I was hoping you could start by telling us just what is Adobe MAX, like what's the purpose of this event and who goes to these Adobe MAX conferences?
Sure. Well, this is not quite like the other events that we cover at TWIT, whether it's WWDC or Build or anything like that. It's not a developer conference, but it is a creators conference. Adobe gets together every year, typically in Los Angeles, to not only talk about some of the products that they're getting ready to release to the masses, but they also allow the community to get together and have sessions and classes and learn different tips and tricks using their tools, the Adobe tools, as well as just a bit of networking because different companies come there that are looking for content creators, and you could give them your business card and say, hey, look me up, let's work together and work on a contract and things like that. It is a really big conference, happens over about 3 days typically, and it's just a great environment and energy there. I love going there. I haven't been in about 2 years now, or 3 years, and I absolutely love it, and I look forward to trying to be there next year. Couldn't make it this time because I got some other stuff going on this month, but yeah, I'm definitely trying to be there next year.
Nice. Now, at this conference, of course, there's a main keynote that takes place where the company announces new stuff, and we always see press releases afterward with some of the stuff that the company has or plans to announce. And I noticed that the term Firefly might as well have been plastered in big, bright, bold letters over everything, with maybe like a little, I don't know, a superscript 8 next to it, because it was just all over the place. So can you tell us about, like, what is Firefly? It's been around for a while, but what are the new updates that Adobe announced for Firefly?
Well, saying Firefly is Adobe's way of saying, you know what, we know you're tired of hearing AI every other word and every other sentence, so we're just going to say Firefly. No, actually, Firefly is Adobe's generative AI tool. It was announced in beta last year. Yeah, I believe 2022 it was in beta, and it's been sitting around for people to play around with. And you just go to the browser, and you can do text to image prompts similar to how you would use Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, but it's really, really intuitive. It had a lot of different tools right there on the screen and didn't have a bunch of nerdy sliders and things like that where you're trying to figure out what happens if I move this. It was pretty straightforward and really well done, but the biggest thing with Firefly was the models were built based off of the data that Adobe received from contributors to Adobe stock. So everything that was uploaded was from people that essentially Adobe already knows, and had a sign off that says, you know what, we can use these particular images, vectors or what have you, to help train our AI. So when you go in to do a prompt, it's basically using good, clean data.
I was able to recently. I did a charity live stream for the Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and
I saw that. Congratulations to you all.
Thank you, thank you. One of the cool things, I ended up using Firefly in Adobe Express to help me out with something. There's this mechanism, this little item set in D&D called the Deck of Many Things, and it's kind of a wild, just completely adventure-changing set of cards that when the players draw from it, it can it can change the outcome of what's happening. And I wanted to create some new cards to add to the deck that were just completely made up, that I had completely made up, to add some more fun and kind of wild happenstance. And so,
you're that kind of dungeon master.
Indeed, the chaotic kind. Chaotic good. And so I used Adobe Firefly in Adobe Express to help me create the tarot style artwork for the cards. And I was really, really impressed with what it did. And at the end of the day, what I felt, what I really enjoyed about it, I think, was that I didn't feel as kind of gross about it, because I knew that this was all artistic information, that the licenses and the agreements and everything was all already in place, and that
you didn't feel like you were stealing.
Exactly.
Just say it.
That is what it boils down to. And so, yeah, I mean, Adobe does seem to be super conscious of the impact that AI generated content could have on the industry, or is already having on the industry. So, outside of it having those deals in place with Adobe Firefly, what all is the company doing to address this issue and kind of make it easier for people to know what's going on, and the content that they're using is good to go, or may be the result of some sort of copyright theft?
Well, you got to give Adobe credit, because they have latched on to the idea that AI generated content is not going anywhere anytime soon, and decided, you know what, we're going to participate in this, but we're going to put some guardrails up as best we can to not only protect the people that are consuming this content that's coming out there, but also protect the creators of the generated content and the models. So they have a lot of guardrails in place, and they've now been working on for about a year and a half with the C2PA, I believe is what it's called, which is an acronym that's dealing with content authenticity. So when generative AI creates a piece of art or what have you, no one really knows other than, someone that can pixel peep and look at it and say, oh yeah, I could see that AI did this. Nobody really drew this or created this. Well, with the Content Authenticity Initiative, there's now going to be some badges embedded into the actual files that are created. And it allows you, the consumer, as well as the creator, to see where this file came from, how it came about, if it got edited and modified any additional times, and it's all encrypted. And it's really, really neat. And it's something that's been worked on, like I said, for about a year and a half, including it being open source, so everybody can get into this and see the in and outs and how it's going to work for the creators and for the masses out there to keep everybody safe from this interesting time of voting season coming up here in the U.S. So there's the fear of misinformation and different disinformation being put out there. But if we have some tools out there to say, hey, this is authentic, this was created by so-and-so on such and such date, and New York Times got a hold of it and decided to do some exposure adjustments on this image, and they published it. I mean, you're going to be able to see that record line for line.
Nice. Now, you have an example, I think, of this on your website. Is that the case? I saw you shared a link with us.
Yeah, and the thing is, I wanted to share this because this is definitely a work in process, the work in progress, the Content Authenticity Initiative. Adobe has partnered up with a couple different brands and manufacturers out there, including Microsoft, Nikon, Leica, I want to say Nike, and a couple other brands, but not everybody is on board just yet. So I just threw some images up on my website at random just to sort of prove that right now it's not necessarily working for my website because, well, maybe Squarespace doesn't have something in place just yet. So if you go to the images there, they look like the same image. That's image 2. Image 1 has a person in it, and I basically just used generative fill to remove the person. So that's AI that's in place, and then the person got removed, but yet there's no type of badge or anything on there that says, hey, this was created by me, and that I use generative fill to fix this and get rid of this person. So, understand that this has been quote unquote photoshopped, if you will. And I started to think about that a little more because we have people that are taking pictures or what have you and putting them to social media, which is where a lot of this fear about misinformation is going to be stirred up. And right now, you put this on Instagram or what have you, you're not going to be able to see a badge, but hopefully Meta and the others out there are going to be able to work with Adobe and that whole coalition to figure out a way to put some type of badge out there to let us know, hey, this is a legit image from this particular poster.
What about stripping out that metadata? Because, I mean, when I think of like photos on my phone and sharing location, there are ways to turn off the location capture for the photo, which I actually do, but there are also ways to strip it from a photo that's already there. I imagine that's going to be pretty darn easy to do here as well. Really, at the end of the day, it just comes down to the scruples of the person who wants to share the photo, right?
C2PA has addressed that and put in place where if the data gets pulled out, there will be a flag that shows up on the file that says, hey, this has been modified. But again, depends on where you look at it, you're not going to see it. Like right now, if you use Microsoft's Bing images, I believe they are now displaying the badges for content authenticity. That's just one source, but we need everybody to get on board to be able to see this stuff.
So, yeah, that's a tough one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw a curveball.
Oh, no. It's the idea in general. Like, I absolutely 100% want there to be a way for AI generated imagery to be something that anyone can verify, right? But I don't want it to be something that gets in the way of what it is that I'm making. And an example of this, going back to what I was just talking about before, at first I made the images for those cards in, I think it was in Photoshop. No. I made them on like the demo page for Adobe Firefly, the latest edition. And when I did that, it had a little watermark in the corner. And that it's good that the watermark is there, but what's annoying about the watermark being there is that it gets in the way of the artwork, and I don't want that to be. It gets in the way. And so when I made it in Express as a person who has an Adobe account, then I was able to make it without the watermark on there, which is how I wanted it to be. So I almost wish there was some sort of machine readable watermark maybe that got added as opposed to something that's so obvious.
That's part of the badge that the C Content Authenticity Initiative has put out there. It's not necessarily a watermark, but if you were to hover your mouse, it would show up on your screen that, hey, this is legit. And it works well, again, with the partners that have actually implemented this. And then you have camera manufacturers that are thinking about trying to figure out a way to put it into their camera systems. Because right now you can put your copyright information into your camera. So every time you snap a photo, it writes it into the metadata of the file. But again, that could very easily be stripped out. But again, with the C2PA, supposedly there's encryption that's in place, and it will allow us to be able to see, all right, this is someone tried to tamper with this, and it'll put a flag out there. You're not going to see it like right exactly on your image, but if you hover, then the badge pops up. So it's not disrupting the actual art that you're trying to view.
That's good. Now, let's break away a little bit from AI to talk about the general updates that people can expect in the Creative Cloud suite. Because I know Adobe did not just spend the whole time talking about Firefly, but like, will we see updates to Illustrator, InDesign, Dreamweaver? You know what I mean? There's so many other applications. Let's not forget about them. There's
a couple of different updates, but I hate to break it to you, most of it is geared around AI for their packages. But as I said on our Twit blog, twit.tv/blog, AI is not here to take jobs from content creators, okay? It's here to help us out. So inside of Adobe, yes, you have the generative fill options for the likes of Photoshop, but you also get generative fill in Illustrator. Even some additional AI is being used in Premiere Pro to help speed up video editing. Everybody there at Twit is a content creator, and I know pretty much everybody in there can edit video one way or another. Well, they decided to figure out a way to make that even easier with text-based editing. So as you're listening to your video, and it'll transcribe it for you right there. And if you're hearing ums and filler words and things like that, the AI can remove those filler words in the video and do the cuts for you seamlessly. It's just little tools like that are throughout. But then there's also the access of having Photoshop on the web. So if you want to work on a particular project away from your workstation here and not with all of your super duper powerful Macs and Windows machines, you can pull it up in a browser and work on those files. And it's pretty good. They're going to continue to work on it to make it better, but I like the idea of being able to open up Photoshop on a Chromebook, because everybody's not able to do that. And they also announced having Adobe Illustrator available on the web. It's definitely beta. It's not quite ready, but they're working on it. So again, Adobe is trying to do a lot of things to make to make creation a little bit more accessible for everybody.
Nice. All right, let's break through this real quick. The conference always includes something that Adobe calls Sneaks. So I was hoping you could tell us a bit about Sneaks and what the company has announced this year. Oh, of course, explain Sneaks and then tell us what they announced this year.
Sure. Well, Sneaks is Adobe's way to sort of, quote, end its conference to say, hey, this is some of the stuff that we've been working on, and it's called Project So-and-so. Let's have some of our developers come up here on the stage in front of thousands of people and present what they've been working on. And so a lot of the things that we see today in our Adobe products have been shown off in Sneaks. Granted, Sneaks can be quite innovative and exciting, but yet we still have to deal with some of the controversy that comes out of there. I can remember, I think it was like 2018, something like that. They demoed an audio file, a WAV file was being played, and they wanted to say that have so-and-so actually said this phrase. And when they put it up there, they basically said, have a Barack Obama say so-and-so. And they were able to manipulate the file to where it sounded like Barack Obama said something totally off the wall.
On stage, they showed that they could make Barack Obama say something.
Right. Just in a
what?
It was pretty scary. Yeah. And that's the thing.
That's tone
most of the
deaf.
time it is pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting most of the time, but at that moment, I can remember being in the venue and everybody got quiet. Everybody got quiet.
It's like when Adobe made the woman smile that time.
Stuff like that. You know, so again, Adobe has been trying to learn from missteps like that and understand, okay, we need to make sure there is a level of authenticity out there or a warning that says, hey, this is something that's AI generated, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what Sneaks is all about, is some of the tools that they're trying to put in place to help make things easier for content creators. And they announced a couple different projects that I thought were very, very exciting, especially when it comes to video. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but you're working on a video file and someone is in the background. You could literally do a generative fill to remove that person from the background of your video. So if I'm sitting here just doing a talking head and I accidentally had a light on behind me, and I didn't want that light there because the light was distracting, fix it in post. Just circle it with a selection,
that is
fill
wild.
it in, and it works. And not only does it work for just me sitting here as a talking head, if I were moving around and the camera was moving around, it was able to go frame for frame and motion track to fill in the spot that was
consistently fill it similarly.
Consistently,
wow.
Yes.
Because I've seen some generative
fill.
stuff,
Project
that
Fast Fill,
frame to frame to frame, things look
Yes.
slightly different and stuff. But this is
gosh, it was quite fascinating. There's that, and then there's tools like in Illustrator, because people are trying to figure out how to create characters and things of that nature, and not everybody can draw. Well, if you want to just doodle out something that looks like a puppy, you can sort of doodle it out.
My puppies
Everybody's
always
not
look
Joe
like
Esposito.
trash bags. It's like, no, I was trying to make a puppy, not a glop.
Right. And you could doodle that out and say, hey, this is a puppy. And I'm sure Adobe's Sensei AI is going to look at you sideways and like, yeah, whatever. But
Let me help, says Adobe Sensei.
Yeah, it'll jump in and generate that form into an actual puppy.
That's cool.
And creates vector files. So if you want to bring this into Illustrator and use all of the different tools such as puppetry and things like that, you can. It was super daggum cool. And they put it up on YouTube now. I just checked this morning. It has now been published to YouTube. I'll get you guys a link to put in the show notes. It is so fascinating.
Cool. All right. We do need to let you go, but just one quick last question.
Sure.
Was there one thing that stood out for you that you just felt, whoa, that's a thing Aunt Pruitt is very excited about?
Well, besides that, with the video, there was one more thing with fashion. I believe it was called Project Primrose. And this is on my radar because of my son, and I'm so proud of him and what's going on with him. And he's being into fashion at such an early age and has a real passion for it. But they're working on a way of pretty much digitizing some of your textiles and allowing you to have prints and designs that work with you and change on the red carpet, and all is just with the click of a button, or it has sensors in it that works with how you moved. So the lady, she had a dress on, and as she flowed and twisted and turned a certain way, the pattern worked
neat.
with her, and it was really daggum cool.
That sounds really cool. Of course, folks can head to, I think it's max.adobe.com to watch some of that. If folks want to keep up with your great work, both in the club and outside of it, where should they go to do that?
Make sure you're following me all over on the social medias. I am ant_Pruitt on pretty much all of them, even that Xter, whatever it's called these days, x.com. Make sure you follow me on all of those platforms. But most importantly, make sure you're checking me out over in Club Twit. You know, plug. Twit.tv/Club Twit.
All right, and thank you so much for your insights and understanding of Adobe Max. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Ant.
And we'll
My
talk
pleasure.
to you soon.
Take care, gents. Thank y'all.
See you in the office soon. Sitting
Yes,
right
sir.
behind me in my office. Okay. Coming up next, I have in my hands and have for the last week the Pixel 8 Pro, Google's latest premium device. I'm going to give you a review. And then after that, after the break after this one, we're going to talk with Mishaal Rahman about some of the cool kind of technology that makes Android 14 and this phone special. So that's the next, I'd say, 30 minutes of the show coming at you here in a second. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Brooklinen. With nighttime starting earlier, like I can feel it, it's in the air right now. The spooks are coming out. Let Brooklinen help with those seasonal scaries so you can curb those fears with a cozy Brooklinen setup to settle into each night. I can speak from experience. We've got Brooklinen sheets on our bed at home, and we love them. It's actually kind of funny. We have the Luxe sateen sheets, and then we have a few other sets of sheets, and we have the Brooklinen set. And we kind of like have this like carousel between them. And when the Brooklinen comes into the carousel, it's always my favorite moment. Like, I'm so looking forward to getting into the bed with the Luxe sateen sheets that we have from Brooklinen, and they are amazing. You don't want any monsters hiding under your bed, of course, except maybe your dog. And the top of your bed deserves the best sheets. Since 2014, Brooklinen has offered premium, well-made linens that are tried and tested, so you only have to worry about what's on your bed, not what's under your bed. Sweaty, bad dreams after watching a scary Halloween movie. You might experience that, right? Luckily, Brooklinen offers a whole fleet of sheet options, from linen to flannel, to accommodate all sleepers. So if you're a cool sleeper, a hot sleeper, everything in between, they've got you covered. With limited edition colors dropping regularly, Brooklinen keeps you well rested and fresh. So you can use those old sheets for your ghost costumes. Maybe those sheets that I'm using when I'm not using Brooklinen, we'll turn those into ghost costumes. And then upgrade to Brooklinen's seasonal picks for linens, as well as top of bed, bath, and more. With more than 100,000 five-star reviews, Brooklinen's internet famous sheets have won multiple awards from industry experts and are made with long staple cotton for longevity and softness. It's really no trick at all. Brooklinen's best-selling linens are sure to curb those seasonal scaries this fall. Visit in-store or online. Just go to brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com. And when you're there, make sure and use that code TNW. You'll get $20 off your order of $100 or more. Plus, you also get free shipping. BROOKLINEN.com. Brooklinen.com. Use promo code TNW for $20 off, plus free shipping. And we thank Brooklinen for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so Google has their next round of Pixel devices. I have received them from Google for review, and I'm going to kind of focus my time this week on the Pixel 8 Pro, because it's certainly the device that I would call my next device, and I kind of knew that going in. And we can kind of talk a little bit about what makes this special, and then a little bit later, we're going to have Mishaal Rahman join me to talk a little bit about some of these features in more detail. But this is the Pixel 8 Pro. And if you, I should have brought the 7 Pro. Why did I not think to bring the 7 Pro? If you have the 7 Pro, you'll probably notice that the standard design is still there, right? Like, this is really Google's signature Pixel design, that very, I think at first it was a strange looking color bar, but I mean, my eyes have definitely grown really accustomed to it. I actually really like it. I think it's a striking and very unique and original kind of design. They've got a nice little matte finish on the back. I'd say the corners like around the edges and everything are maybe a little more rounded than maybe what we saw last year. What is not rounded this time around is the display. The display is flat, and I'm a big fan of that aspect. The rounded displays on the sides, and I think we have here Burks to, what is this? This is the 7A? Or the 6A. Oh, okay. Well, the 6A is going to have the flat display as well. So actually, you can get kind of a size comparison between the 6A and the 8 Pro. But I'm happy to say that they're bringing the flat display back to the premium. I just like it a lot better than having that kind of like waterfall display off the side. It has, you may remember, the temperature sensor. That's what that sensor is right there, which is, I don't know.
What's
it's
it for?
One of those features that, like, I don't know why I'm ever going to use this.
Is it?
But
It's like an ambient temperature sensor.
yeah. So they say it's not clear on humans yet. They're working on that, although you can. So I can put it in front of my
that kind of sensor.
87.2. Yes, and I'm not pushing it on my skin. Right. I'm just kind of putting it in front. I think really kind of what the, and I don't even know if that's accurate. Am I 86.7? Hopefully I'm a little bit warmer than that, but maybe, I don't know, on the outside.
Can't quite tell.
On the inside, I'm probably a little warmer than that. On the outside, a little cooler. Anyways, this really does feel, you know, again, like one of those features. It's like in the Pixel 4 series, there was the Soli radar.
Yes.
And it was like, well, that's neat, but why?
Yeah.
And I get the same feeling off the temperature sensor. To be honest, like I guess it's neat that it's there. It's probably going to be one of those features that I'm just not going to use.
What was
they showed it like you could check the temperature of your coffee. You could, and I think where everyone kind of landed with this is, you know, when you think about when this was probably being, you know, iterated and worked on, was probably during COVID.
Yeah.
Temperature was a really big deal back then, and if this phone had existed back then, it probably would have been a big selling point. Like, oh, you can, you know, check your temperature before you leave the house or something like that.
That is, yeah, that's still kind of nice. I've, because of the pandemic, purchased so many different types of temperature, of thermometers of some sort, body thermometers of some sort. And it's hard to find one that works well, is accurate, and is, you know, cost effective. So yeah, the idea that it's built in is kind of nice. I could also imagine if you are, you know, running a Windows machine and you want to measure the temperature of it after it's been running for a few minutes, you know,
right. This thing's really heating up.
Yeah, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, doing thermal checks or something like that on your machine. Yeah, I mean, you can come up with like ways that you could use it, but again, it just comes down to like
it's a solution that's kind of without a problem.
It's just interesting that that would be a feature that would be included on a mainstream device. You know what I mean?
But along with Soli, we saw that technology end up in Google's other products as a means of interaction. So maybe they're once again testing something that down the line we'll go into, because I could imagine having all of your Google Nest devices with sensors built in, so that when you were checking your morning calendar, it's going, ooh, you kind of look like you might have a fever.
Oh, right.
And then you kind of check in with yourself and you're like, oh, I shouldn't go into the office
wait
today.
a minute. Oh, wow. That would be crazy if your technology starts telling you, like, without you asking, you need to stay home from work today.
How you feeling?
Who knows? Maybe the phone will do that somewhere in the future. That's really interesting. This has a 6.7-inch OLED, what they call Actua display. Actua.
Well, Actua.
And so this is Google's own kind of display, kind of marketing / technology. It ramps from 1 to 120 hertz refresh, depending on screen content. We've seen that before. But this does this. But what it really refers to is brightness. 1600 nits HDR brightness, 2400 nits peak brightness. If you're outside with this thing, I've tested it a lot outside, you have no problems seeing what's on the content of this screen.
2400 nits.
It is super bright. And not just in the blind use sense. The HDR content, this phone is really built around Ultra HDR. And that is one of the topics that I'm going to talk about later with Mishaal. He's really going to kind of break that apart. But you really end up seeing it in certain ways when you're interacting with the device. Certain ways where suddenly it just those brights aren't necessarily like maxing or peaking. Like there's still definition and detail there. Same with the darks. And so it's really nice. Like you get a really wonderful display experience, nice rich colors, all that kind of stuff. I think the real big thing here though, with the 8 and the 8 Pro especially, is the chip inside. This is Google's Tensor G3 chip. This device, by the way, has 12 gigs of RAM on the 8 Pro, which is really all about AI performance on the device. Like, yes, it's a fast performing processor. It's probably not going to beat Samsung's, latest phone as far as processing everyday tasks. But the AI capabilities are pretty stunning. Let's see here, I'm going to go in and create a doc here. Give me 1 second. If I go in here and just fire off the voice transcription and just start talking about how cool it is. I mean, this is all happening on device. It's happening in real time, and it's really just kind of keeping up with me as I'm talking. And you can read everything as I'm talking, and I'm just talking just to give it more things to transcribe. It's really impressive how fast it is.
That was very fast.
And when you read over it, it's, I'd say it's like 90% accurate. It's like so close to there that it's very usable. That's just one thing. There's a lot of like camera features. There's like so let's see here. So if I go into this photo of my dog, Bronson at the dog park, I'll try and not get reflections. Tap edit. This will bring up the edit mode. There's this little button down here, which is essentially kind of like an auto edit mode. And I can go in there and I can circle. You used to be able to do this, but now things are a lot quicker. I can actually move him, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I can go ahead and move him over there. And then when I do this, it will process. It's going to, I think this is happening on device. I can't remember if this particular thing is happening in the cloud or on device, but it does take some time, which gives me some suspicion that it might be happening in the cloud. And it's going to give me 3 different options of this image. Okay, I'm just trying to
vamp. This is very AI, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely, yes. But I did this earlier, and like you couldn't even really tell looking in the grass, that it had moved. It must be in the cloud because this is taking a little bit of extra time. Nonetheless, I've done this feature on other shots, and it did generative. Okay, so now he's moved. I didn't capture his shadow, so his shadow's behind. That's a little bit of a difference. But nonetheless, you can see like he was here.
Yeah. No,
and
that's very good.
Things are looking pretty good. Now Bronson's over there. It's just his shadow that's left behind. That's so funny.
And it would take someone a long time to do this manually. If I were to pull it up in Photoshop and do all of the work to make that happen, it would take me a long time.
Absolutely.
I love that these tools are becoming more available to folks. That's just so nice.
Yeah. So, and then there's another one which I have to play around with a little bit more, best take. So if you and I were in a shot and we took like a number of shots together and, none of them are quite perfect, we're not quite smiling at the same time, it will know that there's multiple shots lined up. And for every face, I can tap the face and it'll say, here are 3 face options for you.
What?
And so I can say, I want the smile for this person and the smile for this person. And it'll take the versions.
Do you want to try it? I can come stand over there.
I think maybe we have to now. Okay, so I'm going to take sorry, audio listeners. So. Okay. All right. So now let's
see if this works in real time.
I want to see what happens here. So let's see here. So we go to edit, and it's doing a little bit of on-device stuff. Tools, best take. Okay. So now it's finding similar shots to improve the photo, and hopefully this happens faster. Okay. So we'll go ahead and zoom in here. Micah, we've got that. We've got that.
Wow.
Got that. Okay, let's go serious then.
Yes.
Okay, now
that is wild.
There we go. Or we can go smiley, and there we go.
That is wild.
And I'm looking on the edges to kind of see, and
on the other one, it moved his ear.
It must have been how my head was moved.
There's some imperfections. You can kind of see a little bit of like a blue thing on the ear.
Yeah.
But the fact that that you can even do that is really
is so like yes,
really
of course.
crazy.
If you pixel peep, as Ant was talking about earlier,
you'll be able to find the imperfections.
For people just posting, quickly to their Instagram or whatever, that is a really cool feature.
For sure.
I love that idea, and I think the just the impact that it has on giving people more ability to get the photo that they want. Because Jason Snell was talking about this a little bit on Mac Break Weekly, the difference between kind of what Apple does and what the iPhone does and what Google does, and how if we think of a photograph as a captured moment in time, what we were doing, whether it was the smiling or the frowning, that was all the same moment. And so does it really matter if the photo that we took is exact? No, what we were trying to capture was that moment in time. And so we want the photo that looks great and that is capturing the feeling. So if that's serious, then we can switch it to serious. If it's happy, then we switch it to happy, and that's fine. And even if we look back on the photograph of Jeff Jarvis that's over there, that is just as fake in the sense that we don't know the context of what's going on outside of the frame, what may have happened in that moment, how long it took to take that photo because maybe he sneezed right beforehand and so they had to do it again. And so
but all we're left with is the perfect moment.
Perfect moment. And so if you want to make that perfect moment happen, now or in post,
this
the photograph,
is the photo, of course,
then,
of Jeff Jarvis that we're talking about.
Then who cares? I think that what matters is that you get the photo that you're after.
Yeah.
So I love that.
That's interesting. I like that way of looking at it, because I've felt a little creeped out by this, because like what actually is a picture anymore. When we can manipulate it. Having said that, like, we've been able to manipulate photos for a very long time. We've just assumed that anything taken on our phone and posted to the internet from our phone is probably representative of the actual photo. And now what we're seeing is, oh, wait a minute, processing power, capabilities, tools, they're all at a point to where we can do the things that we used to need a desktop to do.
Think about all those photos of the Leaning Tower of Pisa where people are holding it up. They're not actually holding it up, folks.
Yeah, right. That's true.
No photograph is real because it's always a captured moment. So I think we if we can get past that and go, look at the moment, the memory that's what the photograph is in the first place. It's our ability to re-access that moment. Yeah. And if we want to remember it as the two serious people or the two smiley people, whatever the situation is, I think that's great.
Yeah, interesting. And so the Tensor G3 is enabling a lot here. And I haven't even touched on, there's a bunch of features that are coming down the line. They're going to be doing some video improvements to improve the darkness quality, which will require some sort of cloud kind of interplay in order to do some of this. So it's not all entirely on the device, but the G3, I think what really makes it special is it's Google's chip that is designed to work with Google's AI and kind of the brainy things that they're coming up with on bringing AI into your device. So it's cool. Just real quick here, because we've already gone pretty long on this. The camera itself, updated camera hardware, I'd say pretty meaningful updates as well. 50 megapixel main, which is similar to last year's, a higher 48 megapixel wide, which I think is great. The wide sometimes gets a little grainy and smeary on some of the previous models. Now things are a little bit sharper. 48 megapixel telephoto. I just love the telephoto and continue to love the telephoto on the 8 Pro. You also have some Pro controls that appear in the camera setup as well. So if you want, you can get in there and you can change some more of the settings, kind of go a little bit deeper depending on how you have it set up. Things like ISO, and really get in there and tweak it. Same for video. HDR 10 and 4K 30 frames per second. You can record to 60 frames per second. But if you want that HDR quality, which let me tell you, you actually want it, we're going to talk about that in a second. You want to be 4K 30 frames per second. And I think it's a long time coming, because Pixel's video recording hasn't always been the best, but I feel like they've made some real improvements here, and I'm excited to see, because they're going to continue to push these out, some of these new features that are really going to take video recorded on the Pixel 8 and the 8 Pro to the next level. So I'm really looking forward to that. I guess like I've touched on these things. Oh, battery life, excellent, by the way. I've had like 30%, 35% at the end of the day, every single day. I think one of the things that I really want to point out, though, is it has 7 years of updates now. This is the first, to my knowledge, this is the first Android phone that's promising 7 years of updates, security updates, and for the Pixel devices, they do regular feature drops for the Pixel devices. Google's promising 7 years. It used to be 5. And I think that brings it closer to kind of what you experience with Apple and iOS devices. Yeah. Apple has done an amazing job of making their hardware last that long, one, and two, dedicating themselves to keeping it updated and up to date for that long. And Google's doing that here. Obviously, 7 years is a long time. We'll see how this device is doing in 7 years. Right. But I'm really give them a ton of praise for making that commitment because, again, I think that moves the industry forward for other Android manufacturers. So having said that, I think this is a really special Pixel phone. Like I've loved it so far, and I know I'm not alone. A lot of other people who have played around with this are like, okay, this feels like Google once again, but even more than in the past, taking itself seriously when it comes to hardware. I really hope they don't give up on it. I hate that I have that little suspicion in myself at this point where I don't trust Google as much as I used to. But they're doing really wonderful things with this phone, and at a really important time where AI and the potential of generative AI and all these advancements around AI, like they're just in a really great place to capitalize on that on their phone. And I think this is a really great example of that. So Pixel 8 Pro, I'm a super big fan. I'm going to be spending time with the Pixel 8 and then also the Pixel Watch, the new Pixel Watch as well, the Watch 2. So you can, stay tuned in future episodes of TNW for those reviews, but that's where I'm at right now. And we are not done talking about the Pixel 8 Pro, even though we do have to take a break. Mishaal Rahman will be with us after the break to talk a little bit about HDR on this device and what it means to be Ultra HDR.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll hear about that in a moment. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by our friends, IT Pro TV, now known as ACI Learning. Our listeners, you out there, know the name IT Pro TV is one of our trusted sponsors for the last decade. As part of ACI Learning, IT Pro TV, now IT Pro, has elevated their highly entertaining, bingeable short format content with more than 7,200 hours to choose from, and new episodes are added daily. ACI Learning's personal account managers will be with you every step of the way. You can fortify your expertise with access to self-paced IT training videos, interactive practice labs, and certification practice tests. One user shared this review, quote, "Excellent resource, not just for theory, but labs incorporated within the subscription. It's fantastic. Highly recommend the resource and top-class instructors." Don't miss ACI Learning's practice labs, where you can test and experiment before deploying new apps or updates without compromising your live system. MSPs love it. You can retake practice IT certification tests so you're confident when you sit for the actual exam. ACI Learning brings you IT practice exam questions from Microsoft, CompTIA, EC Council, PMI, and many more. You can access every vendor and skill you need to advance your IT career in one place. ACI Learning is the only official video training for CompTIA. Or you can check out their Microsoft IT training, Cisco training, Linux training, Apple training, security, cloud, and more. Learn IT, pass your certs, and get your dream job. Or if you're ready to bring your group along, head over to our special link and fill out the form for your team. Twit listeners receive at least 20% off an IT Pro Enterprise solution and can reach up to 65% for volume discounts depending on the number of seats you need. Learn more about ACI Learning's premium training options across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness at go.acilearning.com/twit. For individuals, use code TWIT30 for 30% off a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. That's go.acilearning.com/twit. And of course, we thank ACI Learning for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All righty, Jason Howell, back to you.
All right. So I read an article by my good friend Mishaal Rahman on Android Police about Ultra HDR, and not to make this show super pixely, But I thought, hey, let's talk with Mishaal about this because he really broke down a feature that in my time using the 8 Pro, I've been really impressed with. This like HDR implementation is really something to see. So welcome, Mishaal. Or maybe not. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, Jason.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And sorry for a little bit of a late start here. It's great to have you here. Mishaal, of course, writing for Android Police, Android Faithful podcast that you're doing with Ron Richards and WinTwit DAO and everything. You are a busy, busy guy. So thank you for hopping on with me today to talk all about this.
No problem.
So I guess at the start of this, like, you wrote about this before the reviews had come out, and Ultra HDR isn't necessarily like a new thing, but it feels new in my use of the Pixel 8 Pro. Like I really see it. Like I can show you an example, and I have no idea how this comes out on the stream. But if you show my phone, John, I can show you this picture of my dog. Or I don't know if you still have that. Yeah, so you're going to see it as super bright on our studio cameras. If I go up here, it's going to kind of ramp things down, and you might actually see it kind of increase. There you go. You see it kind of pop into place. On this stream, that looks pretty underwhelming. It's like, oh, it's just blown out. But when I look at it in person, like the amount of detail that I see and the whites and everything.
That's
like,
very rich.
It's very rich. It's very kind of defined. But this is... What is the new thing that's happened here when it comes to Ultra HDR? Have we not seen this in any of the previous Pixels?
So not in the previous Pixels, no, but it has been something similar has existed in the Apple side of the world for a few years now. It's just that, on the Apple side, it was also limited to their camera app and their gallery app. But now on the Google side of things, they're trying to integrate support for it into the Chrome browser, and also we have some third-party apps supporting it, such as Adobe Lightroom. But basically what's happening, and like why you did mention you heard about it before because Google talked about it at Google I/O, but this is one of those things that you just have to see in person to really get. Like you need to have a device that supports an HDR, that has an HDR display to actually be able to enjoy what you're actually getting with Ultra HDR. And as you saw, like you can kind of see it brighten on stream, but you don't get the same experience unless you're actually holding the phone in person or you're looking at it on your monitor. So what's really happening with Ultra HDR is that it's a new format that's building on top of JPEG. JPEG, I'm sure everyone's familiar, has seen that file format before. It's a ubiquitous image format. Every device, operating system, and app supports showing JPEG files. So what Ultra HDR does is it's a JPEG file, but it also has some extra HDR metadata embedded in it. So that if you take that JPEG file and you display it on any old app, device, PC, game console, whatever, it'll display like normal because it's a JPEG file and every device supports JPEG. But if you take that same JPEG file and you show it on a device that's capable of supporting Ultra HDR, such as the Pixel 7 or later on Android 14 with a compatible app like the Google Photos app, as Jason's showing right now, then that app will be able to take that base standard dynamic range image. It'll be able to add that HDR metadata on top of it, and it'll be able to create this beautifully vibrant, crisp, new HDR version of an image. And this is something that will change like how we take and view images, because a lot of times right now, if you're familiar with HDR, like I'm sure you're thinking, oh, haven't we already had HDR in photography before? Like, what about that HDR button in the Google Camera app that used to exist, right? What is that? What's the difference between that HDR and this HDR? So the HDR that you're familiar with in photography is basically you're taking multiple different images at different exposure levels and then merging them together to create an image with like that captures a broader exposure range. But versus this HDR is basically expanding the color that you're capturing and being able to show the contrast between the brightest parts of the image and the lowest parts of the image. You're not actually just emulating it through like capturing multiple photos. This is like preserving the original image from the image sensor and showing it on displays that are able to actually show that image in its original like exposure range. So previously you had our cameras that are capable of taking much greater dynamic range of colors and brightness levels and things like that. but you would always have to squish that to be able to show it on displays that were only standard dynamic range capable. But now with Android 14 and this Ultra HDR format, you're able to take an image that's capable of being shown on the same SDR displays, but also expanding that range of brightness information so that you can show it on as the image was originally intended to be shown. And the benefit of that is that, say you have a person wearing a blue shirt and you're out in the park and the sun is shining really brightly, right? Right now you take a photo, and what happens is that you want the person in the foreground to be exposed properly, right? You want to see the person, your friend, sitting on the park bench or something, but you also want to be able to see the sunny, bright sky, right? So what a lot of cameras do right now is they kind of try to make the exposure level of the background and the foreground really match, which doesn't actually make sense because the sun is going to be way, way, way brighter than what's on the ground. So right now it kind of like squishes the two and makes it feel over processed and saturated. Mm-hmm. But with the Ultra HDR, you're able to get both the exposure of the front of the foreground subject, like looking good, but you're also able to really show off the brightness of anything that's actually highlighted like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, this was one photo that really, again, I feel bad for anyone watching the live stream because you're not seeing what I see in real time. These things end up feeling kind of squished when, and a little bit not distorted, but clipped on the live stream because the cameras aren't seeing what my eyes are seeing. But when I took this photo, this is of my two dogs, Bronson and Sugar. They're in the car ready to go to the dog park. Very excited, as you can see. Bronson's in like direct sunlight. Sugar's in the shadows. She's in an unlit car on the inside. And when I took this photo and looked at it afterwards, I was like, that's exactly how my eyes saw the image. And so often when I take photos or something like this, Sugar would be kind of hidden in the darkness and the detail would be lost. Yep. The brightness of Bronson would be very muted and everything like that. But when you look at it on the proper display, it's not that it just gets brighter. It's that everything gets more defined and it really just looks more natural. It's really impressive. Now, iPhone has had this for a while. Micah, have you gone through the same like wow moment that I've apparently gone through with the Pixel 8 Pro?
I think I did, yeah, originally when the iPhone first started adding this feature. What's interesting, though, is that there are a number of people who do not like this feature on the iPhone, so much so that you can do, like if you start to type in HDR iPhone or some version of that, people are wanting to turn
it off.
Yeah, because and I think that part of that is they're used to using photo capturing applications that do a little bit of filtering when you take the photo, and the iPhone's just giving you the stark cold truth of what you're snapping. And so they see the photo and they're like, oh, that's not, but it's more true to the eye, right?
Yeah.
Like what you're saying with there. And so it was fascinating learning that people wanted to know how to turn off viewing it. It's still capturing it, but you can basically say, don't display these photos in that full HDR range whenever I'm looking at them because I can't handle the truth.
Yeah, right. My eyes don't want to see that. Can you do that on this? I didn't actually look to see if there was a way to turn off the HDR preview, Ultra HDR preview.
So right now, by default, the Pixel 8 automatically captures photos in Ultra HDR. There's no way to turn it off. But I mean, if you edit the photo, like in the Google Photos app, and some of the edits that you can do to it, like using the dynamic preset, will disable the Ultra HDR metadata in it. So there are some ways to get rid of it. But I mean, one of the reasons that people didn't really like HDR, and like one of the people commonly cite as a reason for not liking HDR, is that it requires turning the brightness way up, and like people complain, this is too bright. It's like burning my eyes, right? Yeah. So one of the reasons why support for Ultra HDR is so limited right now on the Android side of things is because Google is basically saying that your device has to support a feature called SDR dimming, and that feature basically makes it so you don't have to pump your screen brightness way up just to be able to show HDR images in their full glory. What this does is basically it allows for the standard dynamic range parts of the screen. So like you have a status bar, you have your navigation bar, you have other parts of the web page on a Chrome browser, for example. Those will stay dimmer than the HDR image that's being shown on screen. So you can kind of have best of both worlds. You can show the HDR image as it was meant to be, but you can have the rest of the background not just jacked up to 1,000 nits and like burning your eyes at night. So that's one reason why this feature is currently only available on the Pixel 7 series and later on Android 14, because those devices support SDR dimming.
Wow. Well, it's really something I feel like something to see if people have the opportunity. And I mean, it's not just obviously, iPhones and this particular, series of Android phones that can view this. Certain monitors are capable of viewing it. But I had a fun experience with Aunt Pruitt in the office the other day where I was kind of showing him the 8 Pro and then started showing him some photos. And we started kind of going through the before and after on the HDR, and he was just getting super excited. He was like, "Oh man, I can't wait to get my hands on this." It really is the sort of thing that, check it out for yourself. I could see though where some people are have the complaints around being too bright, because it is bright. It's just it more accurately reflects the brightness of life, I think, is my understanding, at least from my experience anyways. And I don't know, I feel like it's worth it, but maybe I guess I can understand why people don't. Do you have the 8 Pro yet? Are you kind of playing around with these features on your own? I know you were waiting for one.
No, I don't have Pixel 8 yet, but I was able to play around with it just by sideloading the Google Camera app onto my Pixel 6 Pro. And speaking of which, like if you want to actually try out and see what Ultra HDR is like, I mean, I made a GitHub repository that's linked on the Android Police article that Jason mentioned.
Yes.
And that actually has a bunch of sample images there. And if you have a PC that has an HDR display like an M2 MacBook Pro, and you go on that web page, you should be able to actually see the effect. You should be able to see these HDR images in their full glory.
Yep.
Not a lot of browsers and not a lot of users will have an HDR display because it's still just not a very common thing. But a lot of modern high-end Windows and Mac PCs come equipped with HDR displays. So you should be able to see what these images look like.
To a certain degree, it reminds me of like 3D or something, or like what I mean? It's like, you gotta have the 3D glasses in order. But at the same time, it also reminds me of back many years ago when I can't remember what the Android phone was, where the first like HD display that I saw on Android. And I remember opening up the Twitter app and seeing the profile images. They were very small, but the profile images, and they kind of looked like little windows that I was looking through. Like my eyes weren't accustomed to the high definition kind of view on a screen yet. Now it's like, now it's just the way it is. But back then it was a big step up from standard resolution, standard definition. And I kind of get the same feeling with this HDR where it's like, oh man, now I want everything to look like that, So it's going to be hard to take my foot off the gas when it comes to Ultra HDR content. But anyways, Mishaal, thank you so much for kind of breaking this down for us and hopefully getting some more people excited about the technology. What do you want to leave people with as far as where they can find you and support you in the work you're doing?
You can follow me on many different platforms. You want to learn about what's new in Android. My handle is usually at Mishaal Rahman, except on Threads where it's at Mishaal_Rahman because someone else had already taken that username. I'm surprised because I don't know. There's not many people in the world with my name. But I'm also on Patreon, patreon.com/Mishaal Rahman if you want to support the work that I do, because it takes a lot of work to dig through Android. It's a never-ending struggle, never-ending battle against whatever Android team is releasing and keeping up with them.
To try and be one step ahead. Well, you do a great job with it, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today. It's great to hang out with you again. Thank you, Mishaal.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Micah.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All right. And we've got even more coming up shortly.
Yes, that's right. It's time for my story of the week. It starts with a Reuters report. The I guess, news publication has an exclusive about OpenAI's upcoming November conference. OpenAI, of course, is the company behind ChatGPT and is in a sort of partnership financial agreement with Microsoft where ChatGPT is kind of the base of a lot of the generative AI stuff that Microsoft is doing. On November 6th, the company is having a developer conference in San Francisco, and it is rumored to be, according to this Reuters report, rolling out some new features. One thing that it's looking at is the addition of memory storage for its developer tools. Essentially, what that does is it gives developers more of an opportunity to have all of their, or I should say, more of an opportunity to have more of the work that they're doing within the OpenAI API and OpenAI stack. So this just means that right now, if a developer is trying to tie in ChatGPT or some other generative model that OpenAI is working on into the apps or services that they're doing, they kind of have to split things up amongst different services. And so by offering a memory storage option within the OpenAI tool, it will give developers, again, a little bit ease of use in creating the technology that they want to. The company is also expected to be announcing updates and inclusion of its vision technology, so that developers can create or augment their applications with tools that will allow you to analyze an image, to be able to describe an image. One example, a very simple example of this is, say my calendar application. I could hit the plus button in my calendar application, which is how I add an event, and I could then snap a photo of a flyer that I see out when I'm out walking around, and then it would get sent off to OpenAI for processing. They would be able to see the text within that flyer and then parse it out and understand that when the event is, what it is, and then pass that information to my calendar and pop it in as a calendar event. That's just one kind of simple example. Another could be you're looking at a magazine and you see a recipe that you want. And so my recipe app, suddenly I can hit the plus sign, just snap a photo of that recipe, it gets uploaded, processed, and then it gets turned into that recipe card within the app.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Pretty cool stuff. And those are just use cases that I'm coming up with off the top of my head. The Reuters piece does not go into detail about what exactly, but when you think about the vision capabilities of analyzing and describing, that is exactly how a developer would be able to augment their own tools to add that. The whole point of this is to make OpenAI the tool that developers use to better to add this functionality to their apps. Developers are already making use of this in small ways with the OpenAI API, with the ChatGPT API specifically. But they want to make it more robust. They want to make it more powerful and get more developers using it, such that that is where they go first. The developers start to think, that's the tool that I want to use. That's the API that I want to use. Those are the plugins I want to use right there. Early on, ChatGPT started to add some AI functionality by way of plugins. And we've talked about plugins on Windows Weekly before with Microsoft's own Copilot. This started over on the OpenAI side, where there was, a browse with Bing plugin, where if you use ChatGPT to have, to send a question, for example, it would search the internet depending on the question that you asked, read some articles, quote unquote, process some articles, and then give you a response based on the search that it did, but also the knowledge that it had. But then there were other plugins that got added. An example would be a plugin that's called Web Pilot, which is just a plugin where you can paste in a link to a page, and the plugin will help ChatGPT process and parse the link that you send it. So it can pull all of the text from the article that you're sending or from the page that you're sending, and then feed that into ChatGPT so that ChatGPT knows what you're talking about, and then you can ask it questions about that article. There are other tools now that have been added directly to ChatGPT that allow you to upload a PDF, for example, and be able to pull information from a PDF. Wikipedia now has a plugin. There is a plugin called Prompt Perfect, which basically lets you, it uses its own set of generative AI rules to kind of make the prompt that you're sending a better prompt. There's so much.
It's getting so meta, isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. that is truly meta. So these are some of the things that the company is rumored to be announcing, because it is doing its best to try and make it possible for the company to, frankly, make more money. The company, of course, first started out as a not-for-profit, or rather a nonprofit organization that was looking at AI and making sure that the AI that was released, the AI that got out into the world, the generative AI that got out into the world was for the betterment of humanity, and that it wasn't going to harm humanity. But over time has morphed into this company that does seek to make a profit and is aimed at creating a tool that can do so. Now, one of the features that OpenAI is currently experimenting with is a new means of communicating with ChatGPT, and it's all voice-based. I have a ChatGPT subscription, so I have access to this tool, and the tool lets you kind of have a conversation with ChatGPT. So I want to show this, and when I tried to capture the audio of ChatGPT in the past, it didn't pass it through to the AirPlay, so I might have to hold it up to the microphone here, but we can still show on screen kind of what it looks like. So if you have access to this, or if you gain access to this, you'll see a little headphone icon in the top right corner of your ChatGPT app. Right now, it is exclusive to the app. Those of you with a subscription who don't have access to this yet, you might try force quitting the app. I did that once, and then it popped up in the top. But if I tap on this, and I'm going to actually undo so that I can kind of explain it. If I tap on the headphones, it will connect to ChatGPT and then await my prompt. So I'm going to tap it, and then I'm going to give it some idea. So here we go. Could you please tell me a short story about 2 paragraphs about 2 guys, Jason Howell and Mikah Sargent, who host a tech podcast but are suddenly interrupted by an asteroid made of small orange octopi.
Wasn't sure where we were going there at the end.
Neither was I. And so then it processes.
Cloud bubble thing.
Yeah, there's a little kind of a chat bubble as it starts to think about what I said. And this is actually one of the longer times that it's taken. I imagine it's because it's noon Pacific, so it's probably got a lot going on the server side. But we'll see if it,
my
here.
Cloud stuff was laggy earlier today too, so it could be something happening in here in the studio.
I might try it one more time because that worked for me before when it wasn't working the first time. So I'm going to tap to cancel, and we'll try it again, and we'll see if it works this time. Could you tell me a short story about 2 paragraphs about 2 guys, Jason Howell and Mikah Sargent, who host a tech podcast, but while they're recording the show, they are suddenly interrupted by an asteroid crashing into their podcast space. The asteroid is a small collection of purple ostriches. And we'll see if it does this time.
Go.
Certainly.
There we go. Something different this time.
So here we go.
Jason Howell and Mikah Sargent, the dynamic duo behind the popular tech podcast, were in the midst of recording their latest episode when chaos descended from the cosmos. As they bantered about the latest gadgets and software updates, a deafening crash shook their recording studio. Startled, they exchanged wide-eyed glances, their microphones still capturing the moment. To their bewilderment, an asteroid had smashed through the roof, and what tumbled out were not orange octopi, but a small collection of purple ostriches. The giant birds squawked and flapped their wings, turning the podcast studio into a surreal aviary. Jason and Mikah, stunned by the unexpected interruption, could only laugh at the absurdity of the situation. It was a podcast episode they'd never forget, blending tech talk with the bizarre world of purple ostriches from outer space.
So, very nice. Wow, that's a solid voice too.
And this is the thing. So what they're doing here is, you may have noticed there were little breaths.
Yeah, no, that was really well done.
This machine does not breathe, but they put little breaths in there, and they've been improving upon it. Because I'll tell you, when I first used it,
that's really impressive.
It's very impressive. It shows me the potential future of this technology. They will do the one thing early on, and they may be improving upon it even more, making adjustments. When I first used it, it had too many ums and uhs that they were trying to do to make it seem more natural. And so the pauses around the ums and uhs kind of added to it. So it would say, once upon a time, there was a small chicken. And
it was a really uncertain narrator.
Yes, exactly. But what I like about this is I can suddenly imagine a world where I'm listening to, an audiobook, and then I trigger my virtual assistant, and instead of Siri, I'm using something like this, and it feels more natural. And what I wasn't able to show you because it would require too much back and forth here, is that as soon as it's done with its response, then it's waiting for the next thing. And so you can ask it about whatever you need to next. So you really can have a back and forth, and it'll just wait on you too. So It's not as if you have to, oh gosh, I better get this prompt in or it's going to stop listening to what I'm saying. No, it'll wait, and then you can ask it more. And yeah, I've been pretty impressed. There are multiple voices as well. So you don't necessarily have to go with that voice. So it's got some settings in there that make it pretty cool. But that is already something that OpenAI is testing, not even something that they've rumored to be testing, but this stuff is pretty doggone nifty, I think.
I was super impressed by the quality of the, the story was, his standard AI generated story fare.
I did like the reference that I had changed the story to be the purple ostriches instead of the original story that had orange octopi or octopodes. So that's kind of fun that it knew that I had changed it, and it will keep that kind of transcript going. The other day I asked it an actual legitimate question. I couldn't remember sort of the food safety rule, and I checked afterward because I just was like, I want to see how ChatGPT handles this versus if I'd go and do the search. I had made some spaghetti with like ground turkey, so I said, hey, I have some spaghetti in the fridge that I made with ground turkey and peas and some broccoli rice, and it's been in the fridge for a couple of days. Is it still safe to eat? And it was saying, ground meat that's refrigerated typically lasts about 4 days. But then it went on to say something along the lines of like, but, open it, smell it, any strange smells, any weird textures, any strange looks, trust your judgment on that. And if the better option, of course, if you're worried about it, is just to not eat it. And that's where it kind of gave me that moment of, yeah, I'm jogging along or I'm doing something else, and suddenly I just have a question about something, and to have that very natural response is pretty cool. And it reminded me of that movie. Is it Her? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, I have
She or Her,
which strangely I have not seen, but I believe that is the movie that you're talking about with Joaquin Phoenix, right?
Yeah. And Scarlett Johansson, I believe, I think is who plays her.
Yeah, I really need to move that up on my list. Apparently.
Really, yeah, you definitely should check it out. But the just natural interaction that took place, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So.
And that's where this stuff is heading.
Yep,
for sure.
Faster than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking to our devices for a while, but there's always been this perceptible kind of disconnect. Like, okay, well, that's a machine that's doing its best to try and blah blah. And like where the gap is closing. I don't know.
It's closing. Yeah, it's
when
not
it
there,
gets to the point
closing.
to where it's like, okay, this is the future. But I do know the quality of that voice and the cadence and everything.
I want that
was
voice.
super convincing. Like I could envision a person there talking in that voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I could see a person like actually like, oh, we got another one of those weird stories for you to read, Bob. All right, fine, give it to me. So this guy, Mikah Sargent, and you know.
Yeah, exactly. And this to me is like, now those books that I've wanted to read that I haven't gotten around to reading, I could have it read to me as I'm doing other things too. You know, there's just so much potential with all of this stuff. It's kind of magnificent. So.
Yeah, it really is. No question about it. Interesting stuff. Thank you for that. And thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. You. And you for watching and listening to this episode of Tech News Weekly. We do the show every Thursday. Just go to twit.tv/TNW and subscribe. We say it each and every week because we hope that you'll do it if you haven't already. Subscribe. It's super important. twit.tv/TNW.
Yes, and if you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, yes, the ad-free experience, well, check out Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit for $7 a month or $84 a year. You out there can join the club. When you do, you'll get every single Twit show with no ads, just the content, because you are the one that's, in effect, sponsoring the show. You are the supporter of the show, so you get all of the shows ad-free. You'll also gain access to the special Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special Club Twit events get published there as well. And that's a really fun thing where when you join the club, you're going to get access to this feed that has a bunch of stuff that you've never seen before. So joining now, joining later, whenever you join, there's a lot of stuff there. And I know coming up, I'm very excited about the escape room we're going to be doing as part of the Club Twit experience. We also have the Club Twit Discord, which you can be a part of when you join Club Twit. It's a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also many of us here at Twit. Again, twit.tv/club Twit. $7 a month, $84 a year. You'll also gain access to our exclusive Club Twit shows. The Untitled Linux Show, which is a show all about Linux. Hands on Windows, which is Paul Thurrott's short format show that covers Windows tips and tricks. Hands on Mac, which is my short format show that covers Apple tips and tricks. And Home Theater Geeks from Scott Wilkinson, which is all about the home theater interviews, reviews, questions, answers, everything in between, every home theater geekery you could imagine. And Jason Howell's AI Inside, which covers stuff like what we were just showing here on the show. And I'm really looking forward to today's episode, a new tool for AI. So looking forward to hearing about that. So head to twit.tv/clubtwit to check it out. Again, $7 a month, $84 a year. Join the club. We would love that. If you'd like to follow me online or check out my work, I am at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Check out Hands on Mac later today if you are a Club Twit member. Check out Ask the Tech Guys with Leo Laporte and yours truly, where we cover, where we take your questions live on air and do our best to answer them. It's all tech questions all the time. We have a lot of fun on that show. And you can also check out iOS Today, the show I co-host with Rosemary Orchard, where we talk iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePodOS, iPadOS. It's all of the operating systems.
All the iOS.
Yes, all of the Apple OSs.
There we go.
Jason Howell, what about you?
Well, I talk about all the AIs, as you mentioned, on AI Inside, still here in the club. Going to be doing that here in about half an hour. So, Club Twit, twit.tv/clubtwit. You can just find me on any social media platform. Just do a search for Jason Howell. You'll probably find me with different varied names, but just make sure that it is me, because I have had some people out there trying to imitate me. But look for that, Jason Howell on some of them, Jason Howell on others. You'll find me. Big thanks to John Slanina here in studio for doing the show this week behind the board. Thanks to John Ashley as well behind the scenes, because he is rocking it right now. He's doing a lot. So we appreciate you. And we appreciate you at home or on the commute or wherever you happen to be. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye-bye, everybody.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club Twit. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club Twit Discord, a great clubhouse for Twit listeners. And finally, the Twit Plus feed, with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit, and thanks for your support.